We are joined at the NCSL Legislative Summit by Jack Abramoff, who served 43 months in prison for crimes related to his Washington lobbying, is the author of Capital Punishment, The Hard Truth About Corruption for America's Most Notorious Lobbyists. He participated in a panel on ethics reform during the summit and has a weekly radio show on SiriusXM. Welcome, Mr. Abramoff.
Thank you.
Why are you so skeptical that meaningful reform will be enacted at the federal level in terms of ethics reform?
Well, I think it's possible to enact reform, but to do it it's going to require a very strong political plan, because you're asking members of Congress to give up perquisites that they have come to rely on and methods by which they raise campaign finance for themselves. And so the reforms we're looking at dramatically impact their lives. And so other than with a very hard political plan that organizes massive amounts of voters, it's going to be very tough to get them to do it, but not impossible at all.
Yeah. Many states, and we are at the state legislative summit, many states have much tighter ethics laws than federal government laws. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, probably because the states are always closer to the voters and the citizens. Just as government gets more local, it gets more accountable to people who have daily interaction with the lawmakers. In Washington, people tend to be isolated a bit, and in the U.S. Senate, ultimately, they get very isolated from their voter groups back home. And so I think that when there's more accountability and more access, the odds of more common sense and laws that seem more sensible and more moral being implemented are more likely.
What do you think of the Citizens United ruling and its effect on money in the system?
Well, it's complex, and since we probably don't have hours to discuss it, the basics of the decision I agree with. I agree that speech should not be limited. I agree that speech is with other methods other than your mouth. I agree that money should be able to be freely applied to politics. Where I differ with the decision, in part, in several areas, but in part, they did not recognize, perhaps because none of them are legislators, that there is a corrupting and corrosive impact of money in the political system, and that contributions can in fact be tied to actual legislative actions, perhaps not in the sense that they would become bribery under U.S. statutory law, but certainly in terms of it informing the process in an inappropriate way. And I think that the court missing that is a very big problem. And that's the basis on which we're crafting the legislation that we hope will reform that aspect of it. And we hope that the court, if we get there, will not strike that down. But them not recognizing that that is in fact corruption, there is a difficult scenario created when people importuning a government give any financial gift to anyone who's in public service, that act creates a potential of corruption. They're not recognizing that, I think, is really the great deficiency in the decision.
You write in your book that campaign contributions are the lobbyist safecrackers method. Would public financing of campaigns make a difference?
Well, I don't think we'll get, I'm personally against it, but I don't think we would get it anyway, because the country is equally divided. Conservatives are not in favor of public financing of campaigns, so it's almost a moot point. But just in terms of if it were implemented, frankly, again, the people who are promoting it, I don't think are thinking like lobbyists. Lobbyists, if they saw a new pot of money, would be organizing candidates across the fruited plain to run for office and then taking a cut of all the money they got as their advisors. It's another wealth-creating government program. And so on the one hand, that's a problem. On the other hand, I think there's a very strong feeling in this country that, as articulated best perhaps by Thomas Jefferson, that to force somebody to pay their money to promote a belief they don't believe in is tyranny. Now, we see it all the time, of course, but adding one more example of it, I think, would be something people would fight, certainly on the right.
You opposed term limits while you were working in Washington. Now you favor them. Why did you change sides?
Well, when I was a lobbyist, first of all, philosophically, I opposed them because, like many who oppose them, I believe that people want to vote out somebody, let them vote them out. Why disqualify somebody? And as a lobbyist, I didn't like term limits because it's inconvenient for a lobbyist. When you finally purchase an office, you don't want to have to go repurchase it in 6 years. You want to be able to keep it and just maintain it. To a lobbyist, I often say that the best legislator was Strom Thurmond. He stayed there until he was 100 years old, and died in there. So after I rethought my positions on all these issues, I realized the fact is, while there are many exceptions of people who come and get involved in politics and in powerful positions and don't get corrupted, far too many people over time, and I myself witnessed over the course of the many years I was involved, people who started out just fine and lasted 10 years and then all of a sudden became really part of the problem. And I felt that fresh blood is probably what's needed there. Sure, we're going to sacrifice, unfortunately, some folks on both sides who you really want to see in there for life. But I think the cost to the country of having the other folks in there for far too long, and the advantage that incumbency still has, notwithstanding the latest trends of throwing out the incumbents, incumbency still has an immense advantage. And I feel that in balance, term limits would be correct. It's not part of the package we are pursuing right now because we're trying to pursue something that the right and the left can agree upon, and the left won't agree upon that right now.
Are lobbyists and others who seek to influence public votes always going to be able to find a way?
Well, some will. I mean, first of all, most lobbyists obey the law, not only obey the law, behave in a completely appropriate manner. The far majority of lobbyists. They're just doing their best to present the merits of their client's position without any introduction of financial corruption or even legal corruption, legalized bribery, let's call it. Most lobbyists are like that. And lobbying, of course, is a vital right that we have to petition our government. There are always going to be lobbyists like I was who are going to play right up against the edge. In my case, I went over the edge. Who are going to look for loopholes, who are going to look to press every advantage to win. And that's just the nature of the game. People who get into the business are very competitive in general. And the most competitive are the ones who want to win all the time. And so what I say to the reform groups I'm working with is that this isn't a one-time fix. This will be something that goes every year. Because every time, and I remember when I was on the other side, every time they came up with anything, it didn't take us long to find the way to work around it legally. And so similarly, even the best intentioned fixes are going to have flaws. And human beings are human beings, and situations change. And so it has to be a dynamic process, not a static process. And it's going to last forever as long as we have a free republic.
There were some ethics law changes in the wake of your situation. What do you think of them? Didn't go far enough?
No, I don't think they went far enough. I'm not sure that they, I think there were some good changes. I just don't think that they were the mindset that we're now taking, which is let's go for everything. Let's put together a political effort that comes from the grassroots to Washington versus let's find the reasonable people in Washington, the few that are there, and convince them to become bold. And so as a consequence, I think that past efforts have been somewhat diffident and a little timid. And so we're hoping to go for everything we can. Now, by the way, having said that, now that I'm in the midst of it, we see how difficult it is from a constitutional point of view. But that doesn't mean from a political point of view we're going to back down. And I hope we'll get to where we have to go.